Testing.
Yeah, I'm curious about today's announcement.
Hello?
Early in the morning.
Hello? Hello?
Did you get the announcement? Let's see. Send. The one that you received was from my. Okay. So from my personal account, there's one now called Class Announcement at baus.org. But that one, Sandy sent it early, it was blocked. And then I sent it from that account 8:05, I think. And then I got messages that it seems that all of them were blocked. And then I sent from my own personal account. I think that might have gone through. So you got it from my account, from benbodhi@gmail. Did you receive? You got from Ben Bodhi. Yeah. Yeah. First I sent from my own account. Then I thought to send from in case that got blocked, to send from the class announcement. Class announcement at baus.org. It seems that was blocked. No? You got it from my account. From the Ben Bodhi. Okay, so I think we can, let's make sure the size of the screen is okay. Okay, I think we could start. Okay, so we'll begin with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning everybody. And today is August 24th, 2019. And we have been working our way through the Anguttara Nikaya, book of 3, the numerical discourses of the Buddha. And at this point we come to Sutta number 117. And I'm going to go a bit quickly through the suttas that are sort of repetitive suttas which deal with familiar themes. We don't have to dwell on those at any length, but we could sort of look for the more unusual suttas and suttas that need some explanation. Okay, so this is phrased simply in terms, it's called failure. Yeah, so we have the three headings are Sila, Chitta, and Ditti. So these, in a sense, you could say correspond in a rough way to the three stages of the path. So the 3 stages we usually have are sila, that's good conduct, samadhi, concentration of mind, and panya, wisdom, insight or wisdom. And yet these, of course, the section on sila is pretty much the same. The sections on mind and view don't actually explicitly correspond to samadhi and panya, but we could say that these are the beginnings, sort of the roots for the emergence of samadhi and of panya, of wisdom. Okay, so failure in virtuous behavior, this is formulated as violating the first 7 courses of wholesome action. So here, destroying life, stealing, engaging in sexual misconduct, deliberate falsehood, speaking divisively, speaking harshly, and indulging in idle chatter. So those 7 courses, if they're violated, constitute failure in virtuous behavior. And then the courses number 8 and 9 come under the heading of mind, citta. So here somebody is full of longing or craving, and then somebody has a mind of ill will, of hatred, resentment. So you could say longing corresponds to the hindrance of sensual desire, and ill will corresponds to the hindrance of ill will. So those are the first 2 hindrances, the first 2 of the 5 hindrances to the development of samadhi. What are the other 3 hindrances? We have sensual craving, ill will. Yeah, I'm sure you know them. Anybody want to venture a guess? Okay, Ken? Yeah. Okay, so sloth and torpor, or dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and regret, or restlessness and remorse, and doubt. Okay, so those are the 5 hindrances, and those 3 are, I call these the secondary hindrances. The main hindrances are sensual craving and ill will. And so here those are expressed as longing, but this is the coarser form, the actual wish to get the possessions of others. And then ill will is explained as the desire, strong desire for others to meet with suffering and loss. Okay, so when those kinds of thoughts arise, they become obstacles to one's meditative development, and so those are failures in mind. And so when one overcomes these, even temporarily, this is the beginning of the process for gaining samadhi. Okay, then comes failure in view. Whoops. So this is holding the wrong view that in short, like this is the view that denies the moral efficacy of action. So it says that there's no benefit in practicing giving, offerings, or charity, no fruit or result of good and bad deeds. There is no this world, no other world, no mother, no father. Of course, it's not denying that mothers and fathers exist, but the point is that there's no need to show concern for the well-being of one's parents. No beings who are spontaneously reborn. And then no ascetics or renunciants who have understood by direct knowledge the nature of this world and the world beyond. Okay, so holding the right view in these matters is not really fully the same as the higher wisdom that is the aim of Buddha's practice. But we could say that that is the seed for the development of that wisdom. So in order for that higher wisdom to emerge, one has to begin with the basis of having this right view, that there is some benefit of practicing charity, that good and bad deeds produce their results, their karmic fruits, that there is a world beyond this present world, and so forth. Okay, so all of these is failure in virtue, in behavior, failure in mind, failure in view. And these three failures, the Buddha says that is the cause for rebirth in a bad destination. Sometimes people ask, if I have doubts that there are beings who are spontaneously reborn, does that mean that I'm going to be creating such unwholesome karma that I'll get reborn in a bad destination? What do you think? Okay, I believe that there's benefits in charity and practicing giving. I believe that there's fruits of good and bad deeds. I believe there are worlds beyond this present world and so forth. But whether there are beings who are spontaneously reborn, what happens if one doubts that? No. Yeah, anyway, I would say don't worry about that. Okay, so those are the three types of failure, or vipatti, deficiency. And then three accomplishments correspond to this. So this is an accomplishment in good behavior, which is abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. Accomplishment in mind, a success in mental development, is being without this covetousness or longing for the possessions of others, and having a mind without ill will. And then accomplishment in view is holding the right view about the moral efficacy of action, of karma. And then because of accomplishment and behavior, mind and view, beings are reborn in a good destination. Okay, so this in a short that just shows the unwholesome courses of action and the wholesome courses of action, and where those different courses of action lead in terms of the cycle of karma and its results, karma and rebirth. Okay, we could just go down, we just have some repetitive patterns. Okay, dice. So this just says the same thing, but it illustrates the workings of karma with the throw of dice. And similarly with success in karma. Okay, the next one we have a little different. Okay, the first 7 are the same, but now we have, in place of mind, we have livelihood. So what is failure in livelihood? Someone is of wrong livelihood and earns a living by a wrong livelihood. And then failure in view is somebody holds wrong view, just as in the previous sutta. And then success or accomplishment in activity, the 7 courses of good conduct, bodily and verbal, accomplishment in livelihood, someone is of right livelihood, earns their living by right livelihood, and accomplishment in view, the same. So the only thing that's different here is wrong livelihood and right livelihood. And this sutta doesn't define what's meant by wrong livelihood, by right livelihood. But from other suttas we could find that out. Particularly, there's some suttas which mention 5 types of profession or trade that a disciple should avoid. Let's see if I could remember them offhand. Trading in weapons, trading in living beings, which could be dealing in animals for sale. I mean, not in a pet shop, but animals to sell, to be butchered. Dealing in meat, it's different from, or dealing in beings, dealing in animals, one thing for sale, and also probably dealing in human beings in slave trade, and probably also dealing in prostitution, not the women themselves, but the men who make their living off capturing women and forcing them to work in the sex trade. So those would be different types of dealing with living beings. Okay, next is dealing in meats, where you're actually selling the meat, maybe butchering the animal and then selling the meat. Dealing in poisons, this is like deliberately selling things to be used as poisons. And then the 5th is very big thing here in America. That's interesting. Actually, drugs are not included. Maybe drugs could be subsumed under poisons. But there's another big trade which has a lot of influence in Congress. Yeah, so in the Buddha's day they didn't have guns, but they called it weapons, dealing in weapons. Now we have many, many more types of weapons. So guns, bombs, missiles that transport bombs. Okay, so this is livelihood. Next we have 3 kinds of purity. So these are basically, actually the 10 are divided a little bit differently here. So we have bodily purity. So this is three courses: abstaining from killing, from stealing, from sexual misconduct. Then verbal purity, abstaining from false speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. And then mental purity, being without strong craving, without ill will, and holding right view. So that's purity 1, purity 2, oh, this is interesting variation. Okay, the first 2 are the same, so the difference comes with mental purity. And this is expressed by way of the 5 hindrances, and the formulas that are used here are taken from the Satipatthana Sutta. So when sensual desire arises, and is expressed by way of the practice of a monk, so when there is sensual desire arisen, one understands there is sensual desire in me. And when there is no sensual desire in him, he understands there is no sensual desire in me. And he also understands how unarisen sensual desire arises, how arisen sensual desire is abandoned, and how abandoned sensual desire does not arise again in the future. Then the same pattern is used for ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness, remorse, and doubt. So we could say that even if sensual desire arises, ill will arises, even when one knows there is sensual desire in me, there is ill will in me, there is any of the other hindrances in me, that is the beginning of the way to mental purity. It seems that the mind is overrun by these defilements, but when you know that they're present, it doesn't mean that the mind is pure, but this is part of the process of mental purification. When the hindrances are present, you know they're present. Because usually what happens are these hindrances arise, and of course one knows in a sort of one knows in a kind of subliminal way that this desire is in me, or this ill will is in me, but one doesn't stop at the bare knowing of it, but one surrenders to those impulses. But this is sort of turning the brake on, or stepping on the brake. You don't turn the brake on, you step on the brake by simply knowing that one of these hindrances is present in the mind. So that is a starting point for overcoming them. So you have to know when it's present, when it's not present, when it fades away, and then one understands how it arises, what are the conditions through which it arises, what are the methods one can use to abandon it when it has arisen, and then what are the methods for ensuring that it doesn't arise again in the future. Okay, I won't go into this in detail now, but that is the first section. It's in the Satipatthana Sutta, the first section of Dhammanupassana, contemplation of phenomena. So you remember that from the Satipatthana Sutta? You go to the section on contemplation of Dhammas, contemplation of phenomena, and then the first subsection there is on the 5 hindrances, and it's expressed exactly like the text here. So it seems like this has been a cut and paste job from the Satipatthana Sutta, just taking that passage, putting it in here. Okay, now we have another group of items which are organized in a threefold way. These are the 3 kinds of sagacity. Do you know the word sagacity? It's not a word that we use very often in ordinary speech. Yeah, so the Pali word is moneya, which it's an abstract noun based on the personal noun muni. So muni is a sage. And there's some kind of connection of being a muni with observing silence. And so now, even in contemporary India, if somebody undertakes a vow of silence, they call that mauna. So it's common practice in India amongst the ascetics that they might for a week or a month or a year, or some even permanently, observe vows of silence, not speaking. Of course, and you could see actually the connection with moneya, because in Pali we don't have the sound ow. So in Pali, ow would become o. So mona, but you could form from that moneya. But the fact that one is observing a vow of silence doesn't mean that one is a wise person. It could be, in fact, the Buddha criticized the observance of these vows of silence on the ground that it could be a foolish person wants to hide their foolishness, so they make a vow of silence. So if somebody comes and asks them, what is the truth? What kind of practice should I undertake? So they don't know the answer, so they observe the vow of silence to cover up their foolishness. And so there was a time, I think this is mentioned in the Vinaya, the book of monastic discipline, during the one rains retreat, the monks in a particular place undertook to observe the vow of silence. And then after the rains retreat, the Buddha heard about this and he called those monks to his presence. And then they were observing the silence during the rains retreat. And then on the full moon days and the new moon days, these are the Uposatha days, the people would come to the monastery where these monks were living. They would all assemble and they would say, Bhante, please teach us some Dhamma. And then the monks would say, to indicate that they're not speaking anything. So then the lay people went to the Buddha and complained about it. Then after the rains retreat, the Buddha called those monks to him, to his presence, and then he scolded them and said that pigs and cattle also observe vows of silence. So he said you shouldn't be overly talkative, but when it's the occasion to speak on Dhamma, then you should speak on Dhamma. Okay, so this is moneya. And so the Buddha here is redefining the concept of moneya. So we could have also translated this as 3 kinds of silence: bodily silence, verbal silence, and mental silence. So what is bodily silence? Abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual. This is for monastics, for renunciants. So we have abstaining. For the third one is Brahmacarya, observing Brahmacarya, non-sexual activity. For lay people, the ordinary course of conduct, of right conduct, is abstaining from sexual misconduct. But here it's abstaining from sexual activity in general. So that's bodily sagacity, verbal sagacity, the 4 we already know. Then mental sagacity. Here it's defined as the highest fruition, the destruction of the taints or the asavas, the fundamental primordial defilements, and then one dwells in this very life in the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom. So this is the fruit of arhatship. So that is the highest kind of sagacity or silence. So 3 kinds of sagacity. Okay, this sutta is a little different in flavor. This indicates the right attitude of a monk when he's offered to receive a meal at the home of a lay disciple. So here we have the lay disciple invites the monk for the meal. So the monk goes and he sits down, he receives the meal, and then he thinks how good it is that this householder is serving and satisfying me with various kinds of delicious food. So that pertains to the present. Then he thinks regarding the future, oh, in the future, may this householder or his son serve and satisfy me with a variety of delicious foods. And then the third, which seems just to follow from the first 2, he uses that food, while he's eating that food, he's bound to it, infatuated with it, blindly absorbed in it, not seeing the danger in it, and not understanding the escape from it. And then the Buddha says that with regard to such a monk, the offering is not of great fruit because the monk is heedless. Okay, then the opposite case, which is how the offering is of great fruit. Okay, the monk accepts the offering, but he doesn't think how good it is that this lay disciple is giving me these various kinds of delicious food. He doesn't think, oh, in the future may I receive such delicious foods from this householder. And then he uses that food without being bound to it, seeing the danger in it, the danger and attachment to variety of tastes, and understanding the escape from it. Of course, the escape is not abstaining from the food, but it's using the food mindfully with clear comprehension. So the offering to such a monk is of great fruit, because in this case the monk is heedful. Well, I haven't been stopping to ask for questions. Okay, any questions on anything covered so far? Okay, Kenneth?
Bhante, I'm having difficulty understanding what idle chatter means. And this has been like ever since I was a child, like I never quite got what is meant of that.
Idle chatter. I have to say, the way it's defined or explained in suttas, it seems it's always formulated in ways that are particularly relevant to the way monks should, the kind of talks that monks should avoid, but they're almost unavoidable in household life. Let me see if I can find that passage. And there that's expressed as various kinds of pointless talk. Well, literally, it's animal talk. Let's see. Okay, let me get it from the Pali. Okay, it's given as talk of kings, talk of thieves, talk of great ministers, talk about armies, talk about dangers, talk about war, talk about food, talk about drinks, talk about clothing, talk about beds, about garlands, fragrances, relatives, vehicles. Talk about villages, towns, and cities, and countries. Talk about women, talk about heroes, talk about visika, roads, avenues. Talk kumbhatana, it's the place of the pots. I don't quite get the meaning. Pubapeta, talk about those who have passed away. Various kinds of talks, speculation about the world, speculation about the oceans, talk about becoming this and that. Yeah, so those are, usually there's a fixed scene where the Buddha or one of the monks will come upon a group of wanderers who are sitting around engaged in these kinds of talks. And this is called Tirachana. Tirachana kata, which means literally aneka vihitang tirachana katang. So aneka vihitang is various kinds of animal talk. But animals don't talk about those things, so yeah, anyway, so those are the topics. But, you know, that's what is considered inappropriate for monastics, even though we also speak about those things. What is that? Yeah, otherwise, apart from that, there's very little to say. What the Buddha says is that the talk should be on the Dhamma or on the Vinaya, or else keep noble silence. But so often, we speak about those things. Yeah, okay, any other questions? Somebody?
I was thinking about how this could actually apply to lay life. You want to pick what subjects to bring about studying this subject before we
Wait, speak more direct, louder, more directly.
Oh, can you hear now?
Yeah,
See, what I was trying to figure maybe for lay people,
yeah,
one can pick and choose, out of these things, what can be less painful, to talk about.
yeah,
Or that if you're going to be talking about something painful, that it has a perspective,
yeah,
that is not going to cause you more suffering.
yeah. Yeah, and also I think, what's essential maybe is the attitude of mind when engaging in talk. I mean, it's natural in everyday life. You have to interact with other people and find topics to talk about. So, what do people usually talk about when they open a conversation? The weather, family, sports, politics. Yeah, I think it's important to discuss major issues, not gossiping about it, but to discuss issues of major concern. So I don't consider that idle chatter. So let us say maybe use the word gossip. It's maybe better than idle chatter. So engaging in gossiping. Okay, I'll see you.
Bhante, I had a clarification on 124. Maybe, it always come across this, or we had it on right there. For the 7 bodily misconducts, or what we call seethers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and why doesn't
Oh, I say, okay. The use of intoxicants, why is not... Yeah, that's a good question. And this is I haven't seen an explanation anywhere in the text, but this is my understanding. And don't take this as encouragement. But the use of intoxicants itself is not intrinsically unwholesome. So the reason the Buddha includes abstaining from intoxicants in the 5 precepts is because the 5 precepts is intended as an everyday guide for lay disciples for their conduct, for their behavior. And so what happens if one uses intoxicants or uses it over the limit, so to speak, is that one loses the sense of restraint over one's conduct, and then one is more likely to violate the other 4 precepts. The other 4 precepts directly have ethical significance, but the use of intoxicants doesn't intrinsically have ethical significance, but if one does so, then it can easily lead to transgressions of the other 4 precepts. Okay, so the 5 precepts is intended explicitly as a guide to conduct, whereas the 10 courses of unwholesome action are intended to show those types of behavior, whether bodily, verbal, or mental, which create unwholesome karma directly, particularly the unwholesome karma capable of leading to a rebirth, to a new existence. And the use of intoxicants, well, let's say drinking, say, wine or liquor, is not so severe that it can generate those effects. Yeah, actually that should be on the list of 5 too. Let me see if maybe I didn't get the 5 correctly. Let me just find it. Okay, the 5 are dealing in weapons, dealing in beings, dealing in meats, then dealing in intoxicants is the 4th, then dealing in poisons. So did I say 5? I said 5? Previously. Okay, so what were the 5 that I said previously?
said not the people with adopt sexual behavior, but selling sexual.
Well, that was included under dealing in beings. Dealing in beings, yeah. Maybe I only said 4.
You said selling meat.
Yeah, that's here.
You said poison, but you didn't say intoxicant. You said weapons. So what did you say?
Yeah, the weapons are here, intoxicants are here.
Is intoxicant different from poison?
Yeah, intoxicants are separate.
You did mention dealing drugs.
I said dealing in,
You did say dealing in those recreational.
yeah, then I said that maybe that could be included under dealing in poisons.
Wine or liquor.
But that would be dealing in drugs, would be dealing in intoxicants. Anyway, so these are the 5. Never mind what I said previously. These are the 5: dealing in weapons, in living beings, in meats, in intoxicants, in poisons. Yeah,
What, so the hunting.
excuse me?
Was considered as weapon. Hunting device.
Hunting devices. Those are weapons. Yeah, those are weapons, yeah. Whether it's for killing human beings or killing animals. Traps also.
You end up killing the animal that you trap, so ultimately it's killing, and it's torturing another living being.
Yeah.
Hunters who are ethical hunters, will never trap an animal, ever. They may kill it, they want to clean
Yeah.
the person.
Yeah. Okay, let us go on. Should we go on unless there's an urgent question? Okay. Sagacity. Arguments. Whoops. Let's. This is an interesting one. So here the Buddha is speaking about sort of this sutta is intended to promote harmony in the monastic order. So he says, wherever the monks take to arguing and quarreling and fall into a dispute, stabbing each other with piercing words. The Pali expression means literally stabbing each other with the swords of their tongues. So the words are so sharp that as if they're using their tongues as swords to stab each other. So he says, I'm uneasy even about directing my attention there, let alone about going there. I conclude about those monks that they have abandoned 3 things and cultivated 3 other things. So what are the things they've abandoned? These are the 3 wholesome thoughts. Thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will, or thoughts of goodwill, and thoughts of non-harming. And instead they are cultivating 3 kinds of unwholesome thoughts: sensual thoughts, or thoughts of possession, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harming. So those are the 3 things that they are cultivating, and because of those thoughts, they've gotten into fights and arguments and disputes. And then when the Buddha realizes that there's a group of monks that's fighting and arguing and disputing, he doesn't even want to think about them, let alone going there in person. But whenever there are monks who are dwelling in concord, harmoniously, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with loving eyes, then I feel ease about going there. So he's happy to go there, not to speak about even thinking about them. So I conclude that those venerables have abandoned the 3 unwholesome thoughts, and they've cultivated the 3 wholesome thoughts. Okay, now we come to this sutta. It's short, but we could see from the ending of the sutta that it's very important And first there's the background to the sutta, according to the commentary. So the background, there was a large company of Brahmins who had listened to the Buddha preach, and then they gained confidence in the Buddha's teaching, and they decided to go forth and become monks. But they still had their Brahminic pride. And so after hearing a few discourses of the Buddha, they thought that it's not necessary for us to go to hear the Buddha preach. And so they would just stay off by themselves and discuss, matters of interest to themselves. And they just neglected to visit the Buddha and attend on the Buddha. So then the Buddha thought that it's necessary to humble their pride. And so the Buddha went to see them, and he taught them the sutta called the Mula Pariyaya Sutta, the discourse on the root, which is the first sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. And if you look at that sutta, you'll see it's very, very difficult to understand, very concise, even cryptic in its expression. And it's said that when the Buddha spoke that sutta, it's one of the very few, in fact, I think it's the only sutta in the entire collection of suttas. Usually at the end of a sutta, it will say, when the Blessed One had spoken, the monks delighted and rejoiced in his words. But the Mula Pariyaya Sutta has a unique ending. Okay, it says, thus spoke the Blessed One, but those monks did not rejoice in the word of the Blessed One. So, those monks, probably because the Buddha's discourse, the Mula Pariyaya Sutta, sort of implicitly critiqued the Brahminic underlying Brahmin philosophy. And so those monks were displeased with the Buddha, but the Buddha, using skillful means, eventually won them over. First, by speaking the Mula Pariyaya Sutta, he humbled their pride so that he broke up their conceit over their learning as learned Brahmins. So then when they became humble, then they were willing to accept the Buddha's teachings. And so then the Buddha sort of prepared them gradually with some further teachings, and then he went with them, with those monks, to the Gautamaka shrine. There was a memorial shrine outside the city of Vesali, and then he preached to them the sutta which comes to be called the Gautamaka Sutta. So he says, I teach the Dhamma through direct knowledge, not without direct knowledge. And probably this statement would be important for followers of Brahmanism to hear, because the Brahmins base their claim to the authority of the Vedas, their sacred texts, on the claim that these teachings have been transmitted orally for many generations. And so why does one accept the authority of the Vedas? Why does one accept the Vedas as authoritative? Because this has come down in an unbroken chain of transmission from the ancient Vedic sages, the rishis of old. So the Brahmins, who are the contemporary teachers, don't have the direct knowledge of the truth of the Vedas, but they're teaching because they heard it from their teachers, who heard it from their teachers, who heard it from their teachers, and then it goes back through time immemorial. So that is, the Buddha says, that's a teaching which is based on oral transmission. Buddha says, I teach, here he says, I teach through abhinya, through direct knowledge, higher knowledge. That's what I want. Yes, it says, abhinyaya ahang dhammang desami. So I teach through direct knowledge, whatever he teaches, Four Noble Truths, three characteristics, dependent origination, Noble Eightfold Path, all of that is based upon direct knowledge. Then the second is sa-nidanang ahang dhammang desami. So this is with no anidana. So the word is nidana here, which has various meanings. What number is this? Yeah, the commentary just glosses the word sanidana with sapachaya, which means with a reason or with a condition. But maybe a sense is a bit obscure. Maybe you could say that the Buddha has reasons for making the statements that he does. And then the third expression that's used is sapatihara. Sapatiharyang. Now this word patiharyang has, let's put it this way, there's a sutta which speaks about three kinds of patiharya. One of these is the patiharya of supernormal powers. So these are things like the ability to multiply the body, to walk through walls, to sink into the earth and rise up, to walk on water. So that's one kind of patiharya. another kind of patiharya, a second kind, is called the patiharya of thought reading, of being able to read the minds of others, and then to tell them what they have been thinking. And then the third kind of patiharya is the ability to teach the Dhamma in the way that's appropriate for the person being instructed. So that is called, we call patiharya, maybe we could render it as wonder, as something that's marvelous or wonderful, a wonder. So there's the wonder of psychic powers, the wonder of thought reading, and the third is the wonder of instruction, being able to tell people what they should eliminate, what they should develop. So here, the sutta doesn't specify exactly what kind of wonder is meant, but I would guess that the most important is the wonder of instruction. Yeah, this is in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Threes, number 60, speaks about three kinds of patiharya, the three kinds of wonders. And it seems it's especially the third, the wonder of instruction, that's relevant here. But also sometimes the Buddha, when he's teaching, if it would be beneficial to the people being instructed, he'll perform a psychic feat of psychic power. Okay, so then he continues. He says, since I teach the Dhamma through direct knowledge, since I teach it with reasons, since I teach the Dhamma accompanied by wonders, my exhortation should be acted upon, my instruction should be acted upon. It is enough for you to rejoice, enough for you to be elated, enough for you to be joyful, thinking that the Blessed One is perfectly enlightened, the Dhamma is well expounded, the Sangha is practicing the good path. And then what underscores the importance of the sutta is the concluding statement. First it says, elated, those monks, now they delight in the Buddha's statement. And then finally it adds, while this discourse was being spoken, the thousandfold world system shook. So it's said that the world system shakes when the Buddha, before his enlightenment, when he enters upon his seat under the Bodhi tree and sits under the Bodhi tree, the world system will shake. Of course, when he attains the supreme enlightenment, the world system shakes. When he gives the first discourse, turning the wheel of Dharma, the world system shakes. And then a few other occasions during his teaching career it will shake. And one of them, usually is after a longer, more momentous sutta. But here we have this very, very short sutta with just 3 statements, and yet it's enough to cause the world system to shake. How does the world system shake? Does everybody, do we have reports of people maybe in Rome or in Greece in the 5th century saying on such and such a day there was a great earthquake? And then if we could trace why did that earthquake take place, we find it's the, what do you call this, the eye of the earthquake? The center of the earthquake was some spot outside the city of Vaisali in India. How does the world system shake? And what about, it says the world system, not just the earth, but the world system. Did Jupiter and Venus and Uranus also shake?
Gravity wave.
What is that?
Gravity wave. Gravity wave.
Gravity wave. What is what is a gravity wave?
It's the space actually change a little bit.
I see, I see. What do you think? Everybody all over the world, people in what's now, let's say, Nigeria, feel the earth is shaking. People in Australia, the Native Americans in North America experiencing the earth shaking. Thought paradigm. Thought paradigms. Yeah. So it's just the way people are thinking. But it says the world system shakes. I'm not testing you. I don't have like the right answer in my mind. I'm trying to say, are you going to get this right? But it's just a question that comes to my mind. Yeah. Yeah.
At the time when these things originated, these thoughts
No.
were making governments deviant what it was, what it is even now,
Yeah.
and many ways of thinking about even religion as well. So all those, but they have been there for a while, and so when the Buddha says something like this,
Yeah.
it's like all the systems, this thousand-fold systems of
Yeah.
shape.
Maybe, maybe. Any other ideas?
I think the space-time continuum shifted at that point.
Actually, that's a good idea.
Because I agree with the thought paradigm shift.
Yeah.
So with that thought paradigm shift,
Yeah.
the world was going to go down this path.
Yeah.
Now it's going down this path.
Maybe, maybe.
I think their body should. Yeah, because anyways, the world in the Nikayas refers to the five aggregates, right?
Yeah.
So, all those Brahmins, their body should.
Your body shook.
They have more than 1,000.
But it says world system. It doesn't say the body.
Actually, this is more of a thought or question. It's like, when you say the world system, it's like the sun and the 9 planets and not the rest of the universe.
Yeah, well, actually, well, we have to, I guess, take a world system according to the ancient Indian conception. And there you find it in we actually took that sutta quite some time ago. It's in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Threes. I think it's sutta number 80. So it explains what is the minor world system. There's a minor thousandfold world system, a middling thousandfold world system, and then the great thousandfold world system. And so each world system contains 1,000 Jambudvipa. These are the 4 continents. Jambudvipa is the southern continent, the northern continent, the western continent, the eastern continent, 1,000 suns, 1,000 moons, 1,000 Mount Sunerus. So it would correspond, I would say, in modern cosmology to a galaxy. Okay.
I was thinking regarding the interconnection of all things.
Yeah.
That if
Yeah, he's going to pass. Yeah.
Since everything is interconnected,
Yeah.
that if one thing shook, if the monks that this was told to shook, everything shook. Because everything's interconnected. Everything's within everything else.
Okay, I'm shaking my hand. So everything is interconnected, but Bowe's hands are shaking. Okay. Okay, my idea, this is not like the right answer, but what I would say is that the monks experience the thousandfold world system is shaking, sort of it's in their experience, but our people in Africa, North America, Australia, Europe are not feeling the ground shake and tremble under their feet like an earthquake is taking place. Okay, anyway, we shouldn't waste time on this. But it's just, I think this is a statement, maybe we don't even have to take this literally, but it's intended just to underscore the significance of the sutta. Because I just want to squeeze in the last sutta, which is, the content is not that interesting, but the setting is, okay, here the Buddha is wandering on tour among the Kosalans, and then he reaches Kapilavatthu. Kapilavatthu is his own native city. And then Mahanama the Sakyan, Mahanama I think would be a cousin of the Buddha, and he's a lay devotee, and at this time I believe he's a once-returner. So he hears that the Buddha has arrived in Kapilavatthu, so he goes to him, and the Buddha says to him, he asks him, find a suitable rest house in Kapilavatthu where we might stay for the night, where the Buddha himself and his company of monks might stay. Okay, so Mahanama says yes, and he searches, he searches the entire city, but he doesn't see a suitable rest house for the Buddha to spend the night. So he returns to the Buddha and tells him there is no suitable rest house in Kapilavatthu where you might stay for the night. Now he says, but Barandhu, the Kalama, formerly the Blessed One's fellow monk, is here. So let the Blessed One spend the night at his hermitage. And this is what I find interesting, because he refers to this man, Barandhu, as the Blessed One's, formerly the Blessed One's fellow monk. And do you notice the last part of his name, Kalama, which suggests, if you know the story of the Buddha's quest for enlightenment, the Buddha's, right, the first meditation teacher that the Buddha went to when he became an ascetic was named Alara Kalama. And then the Buddha took instructions from Alara Kalama and quickly attained the same level of meditation that Alara had attained. But he wasn't satisfied with that and left to pursue his quest alone. And so Barandhu is a Kalama. Probably this was a clan. And we know there's a sutta, famous sutta called the Kalama Sutta, given to the people of Kalama. So this must have been a kind of tribal clan. And this Barandhu must have also been a disciple of Alara Kalama. And so in that past period, probably years ago, the Buddha, at that point still a bodhisattva, and Barandhu were fellow disciples of Alara Kalama. And so Mahanama invites the Buddha to spend the night at his hermitage. And so Mahanama goes there, gets everything ready. Okay, and then the Buddha spends the night there. Okay, now the next day, Mahanama comes to the Buddha and sits down at one side. And then the Buddha says to him, that there are three kinds of teachers existing in the world. Okay, he says one teacher prescribes or teaches the full understanding of sensual pleasures, but not of forms or feelings. Another teacher describes or prescribes the full understanding of sensual pleasures and forms, but not of feelings. And still another teacher prescribes the full understanding of sensual pleasures, forms, and feelings. And so those are the three teachers. And then the Buddha asks, is the goal of these three teachers the same or different? Okay, so from other suttas we know that the full understanding of sensual pleasures is what will lead to the attainment of the jhanas. And so by understanding the nature of sensual pleasures, one is motivated to overcome them, and one overcomes them by attaining the first jhana and the higher jhanas. Okay, the full understanding of forms comes about by seeing into the drawback in material form, physical form, and then attaining the arupa meditations, the formless meditative attainments. And then the full understanding of feelings comes about by attaining nibbana, attaining liberation, complete liberation. Okay, so that is the understanding that we can get from other suttas. Or maybe we could say that the full understanding of feelings comes about through the attainment of the meditative state called Sanya Vedayita Nirodha, the cessation of feelings and perceptions. Okay, so that's the understanding we get from other suttas, but it's not elaborated here. Okay, but the Buddha has asked that question to Mahanama, and when he says this, Barandu the Kalama says to Mahanama, say they are the same. This is a little bit odd. Say they are the same, Mahanama. But then the Buddha says to Mahanama, say they are different, Mahanama. It seems odd that the Buddha would be coaching, telling the Buddha has asked Mahanama the question, and now the Buddha is telling Mahanama how he should answer, which is strange. But this happens a second time and a third time. And when this happens the third time, then Barandu thinks, the ascetic Gautama has contradicted me 3 times in front of Mahanama the Sakyan, who's he's a prestigious person, a powerful, influential person in the Sakyan Republic. And so now Barandu has been humiliated by getting contradicted by the Buddha 3 times. And so then he thinks, I'd better leave Kapilavatthu. And then the text says, then Barandu, the Kalama, left Kapilavatthu, and when he left for good and never returned. But doesn't that seem not so good, not the most admirable way of behavior on the part of a Buddha? You know, we have this, apparently this Barandu the Kalama has set up his own hermitage there. Supposedly the devout reader of the text is supposed to, when reading this, think, hooray, hooray, a victory for the Buddha. But for us today, it seems Yeah, low-spirited, mean, narrow-minded. Yeah. Usually the Buddha is supposed to be gracious, considerate, kindly. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this. Eh? Yeah, but usually the Buddha uses a kind of skillful means of teaching. Yeah, but Mahanama is already a disciple, so there's no question here about having to lead Mahanama to the Dhamma. Yeah. Yeah. So one would think that the Buddha should then give a sequential discourse on the Dhamma so that Barundu could come to understand it. But instead the Buddha just bluntly contradicts Barundu each time, driving him away. I don't know what to make out of this, but perhaps possibly, yeah. Okay, Kenneth? Yeah, we have the microphone here.
I think it seems to me like Buddha knew that this was going to happen when he asked
Yeah.
Mahanama to, Mahanama
Yeah,
to
yeah.
validate this with
Yeah,
fact.
yeah.
So it makes me think there's more to the story there.
Yeah, there's something underlying, some background here that we don't know, that hasn't been transmitted. Okay, I think we'll have to end for the morning, and then we come back, let's say 12:15, 12:20, for we have a little Q&A, and then we'll do the meditation through the afternoon, starting 12:40. So we'll do 3 hours of meditation till we could go until 3:50. Okay, so we'll end with the sharing of the merits. Akasata chabumata. You can recite. Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata cham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata cham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya bhavagupadaya avici hetato etantare satakayupapanna rupiya rupicha sanya sanino dukkha pamuchantu pusantu nibbutting. Okay, so we'll end with 3 half bows.